Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here, and in today's GTA video, we're going to be talking about some interesting bits of Grand Theft Auto 6 info coming from Rockstar Games Insider Tezfunz2, who has actually kind of been in the GTA 6 discussion for, I would say, a couple of years, a couple of months now. You might remember the little back and forth feud that he and other Rockstar insiders had with gaming journalist Jason Schreier. They were basically saying conflicting things about GTA 6, with the Rockstar Games insiders saying that the game was nearly 50 to 60% done, while Jason Schreier was basically saying that's not the case. It's going to be a handful of years before we even remotely are able to sniff anything about GTA 6. So you kind of had two sides telling completely different stories here, both with their own credibility. So he's been involved in the Grand Theft Auto 6 discussion, and even more so recently, there has been a lot of people on social media and fan sites like the GTA forums and even Reddit talking about what their percentage is of how close GTA 6 is being done. People would float around 35%, 80%, etc. And very quickly, Tezfunz2 said, scratch the percentage estimate. It's simply not accurate for a fluctuating environment like game development. And so what he's talking about here is that, some point the game might be 70% done, but then Rockstar decides they want to add, 10 more hours of story. So it might jump down to 55%. Or they want to do more things with the multiplayer. So it might jump down to 30%. I don't know if it would make that big of a jump, but you know what I'm trying to say here is that it's not going to follow a linear percentage. It can go up, down, backwards, forwards, blue, green, left, right, etc. So that really isn't the information we're going to be talking about today, but it is important to know that just because you hear something is 60% done, it could go back to 50%, it could jump up to 80% really quickly. That's just the environment of game development. Now, the reason I brought up what I mentioned at the beginning is because here is where we're going to talk about that thing between Jason and the insiders, because someone ended up saying, where did you even get that percentage? I mean, did you actually get some kind of intel, or is it something you figured out based on past games development cycle? I'm not asking for info or your sources, by the way. I'm just trying to understand how you could possibly get a number based on the development time. By the way, you said it was 60% done last year, so that's what I was talking about earlier. And he ended up saying, what I heard is that it wasn't in the early stages of development, as if it was stuck in pre-production or recently bounced off into full development. How I heard it is the same as Jason. Scratching the percentage is simply because developers themselves can't be sure of distant release windows and whether they can hit deadlines. So giving off a percentage wasn't a wise move from me. Things can fluctuate at any point and likely did due to the pandemic. So lots of interesting stuff to talk about there. When we last heard from Tezfunz2 regarding this, he said it was not in the early stages of development, but could have been very late on in pre-production or bounced into full development. And apparently, Jason Schreier and these Rockstar Games insiders have the same source. So this is where I'm confused on where the confusion is. If they heard it from the same source, how could they get two different ideas? Meaning it's not even going to be years away, but at the time 60% done. And he brings up a good point, again, that things can fluctuate, and they likely did due to the pandemic. We don't know how the last year has had an impact on Rockstar's future titles because we haven't seen anything come out. We've only seen Red Dead Online and GTA Online updates, which are not necessarily physical releases, just updates applied to existing games, as you guys know. So that's quite interesting right there that they had the same source, but he also admits that giving off a percentage was not the wisest of moves. Now again, there was even more follow-up to this with someone saying, yeah, that's the vibes I am getting from this. For some reason, the project was in pre-production hell. Do you think now they finally entered production? And he said, definitely in full development at this point of time, likely since RDR2's release. Pre-production would last a year or two for a game of this scale, as we saw with RDR2 and GTA 5. It's mainly brainstorming and setting the right vibe. A few members here saw a document dating back to late 2012 that mentioned the pre-production phase for GTA 6 with a year or two window. Back then, they were still deciding the setting and the map of the next title, so more like the initial stages of pre-production, or maybe they didn't start yet and are simply throwing around ideas. I have a feeling that document was more of like a future outlook in setting up time schedules for projects. Maybe after the Leslie incident happened, the Housers decided to make some changes. Because back then, 2012, 2013, I would assume Leslie had a saying with the Housers about the next title. All right, so once again, a lot of interesting stuff to talk about here. Right off the bat, he says that at this point in time, it's very obvious GTA 6 is in full development, which is great news and very likely since the end of 2018. And that pre-production phase would have only lasted for about a year or two. Now, if you guys are wondering what that document is like, essentially it just said the next GTA, full production, 60 people plus 10 OS, full production team, with a couple of settings in which the game could take place in: Miami, what's new, small town GTA, tight stories, scheduled characters, ridiculous levels of ambience, every home interior modeled, every building enterable, more realism. If you're wanted, you were on the run for a while. Vegas in the 1970s, casino, somewhere snowy, Chicago, Detroit, or Mexico City. That was the entire document right there. So it didn't give away a lot, but that's basically what they were brainstorming back in 2012. So that's the sort of document that he is ultimately talking about right there. And again, since that has happened, obviously a lot has occurred. The success of Grand Theft Auto Online, people leaving Rockstar Games, the pandemic itself recently in 2020, and is still something that is going in 2021, obviously. So needless to say, I think Tezfunz2 is right. There's too many variables to predict a percentage of how far along Grand Theft Auto 6 is. And I do unfortunately think it might be a couple of years before we start getting anything concrete, like Jason Schreier predicted a couple of years ago, and even since then has sort of backed up his claims regarding that. Now, I don't think Rockstar needs to just reveal Grand Theft Auto 6 all at once with like a trailer, newswire, and stuff, but they can kind of do what they did with Red Dead Redemption 2, like tease it a little bit, and I think that would help alleviate people's anxiety and stress about not hearing about the game and wondering if it's even going to be coming about. So Rockstar doesn't have to like reveal a ton, just little bits and pieces to get us hyped and satisfied until they are ready to reveal like actual information about the title. But of course, I would love to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What do you think of these comments made by Rockstar Games Insider Tezfunz2 on GTA 6 and how far along it actually is? Do you think he's right? Do you think he's wrong? Somewhere in between. Let me know what you guys are thinking in those comments down below. If you guys did go on to enjoy this video, though, a like rating would, of course, be awesome. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new or you want to stay up to date on all the latest GTA and Red Dead Redemption videos that I'm doing here on my channel. And be sure to ring that notification bell as well. Sometimes YouTube just doesn't work, and if you ring that bell, you'll always be guaranteed to be notified when new videos arrive. But of course, as always, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.